Do you like the circus? Do you like the circus? Do you like the circus?
Enter one, enter all! The circus of the bizarre!
You guys still doing okay? Some of you are. Some of you need some more coffee. We provide it for free, so go ahead and fuel on up. Man, we are in week 3 of our series, Not My Circus, Not My Monkeys. And so it's been very cool to watch the impact that this has been having on people's lives, especially as they've been sending in text messages and emails, kind of saying like, hey, I wasn't really sure what to expect in this, but I didn't even realize, I've always thought about like that's other people's stuff. But man, I realized that there's some stuff in my own life when it comes to this circus that I didn't even realize, that my monkeys are a little out of control. And there's some things that I need to adjust and fix along the way to really make sure that I'm walking in step with what God has for me. We've had some other messages kind of saying, listen, I was at work and there was a situation that was happening, and normally I'd been like, whoa, not my circus, not my monkeys. That is above my pay grade. I am not getting involved in that. But then they would be like, hey, this series has really prompted me to help my coworker. And I jumped in just to not even really say a whole lot, but just to be able to listen and say, like, I want to make sure, that you're okay and see how I can help you. I don't even know what that looks like, but I'm just here for you. And watching what unfolded when they're just like, man, my coworker like opened up and I didn't even know what to say, so I didn't really say anything. And they were like, thank you so much. And then I thought, like, I didn't even do anything. I was just there. I was just in their circus. And I don't know about you, but there have been so many times in my life where I desperately wanted someone to jump in. And I looked around, I was like, man, where are they? And I realized there were times in my own life being an introvert that I didn't open up enough to let people in to even know that there was a circus going on. And you may have people in your life where things are unfolding and there's things going on that are back behind that curtain. But when it gets to that center ring, as you peel back that curtain, you're just like, man, I can't believe what's going on. How come you didn't tell me? How come you didn't say anything? Well, there's all kinds of things that happen. Embarrassment. Just kind of, we get in this shocked state. I don't know if you've ever been there where something's happened in life and you're just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't want to adult right now. And you're just like, all these things are running through your mind. You're just like, I don't know what to do. Because most of the time when things unfold and things get crazy and things get bad in our circus, it is very unexpected. And it just rocks us to the core. How many of you guys have ever had a moment in life like that? Like that just like you were not expecting it, it came out of nowhere and just like it hurt you. Yeah, like there's these moments that take place where it's just like, I have no clue what to do. And I go through my professional life, and for me, like I'm a married guy, I have kids, and there's all kinds of things that unfold in every one of those. Now, I try my best. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do what I can as a husband. And then I get to that father side, and I'm like, there are things that just get completely unexpected for me. And if you've been around kids, you know that unexpected can occur pretty much like hour to hour. Minute by minute, something crazy could indeed happen. Like the other day, I was trying to introduce my daughters to probably one of my favorite movies of all time. It's actually a movie that when I watched it, the very first time, it then kind of fueled this passion in me for Reese's Pieces. Do you guys know this movie? E.T. Elliot, phone home and all this stuff and like freaking out. And then, little Drew Barrymore before chaos happened, and just like I dressed him up and like there's crazy, what'd you do? And just the movie. And so my daughters were like, what's that movie? And they saw it on Netflix. I was like, you haven't seen E.T.? And I have to remember, they're 8 and 6. And so I was like, cool, we need to watch this movie. And so we sit down and they're watching, and there's moments in it where I'm like, we'll see how this goes. And then E.T. appears and they're a little freaked out, but I'm like, okay, we're good. Nobody's breaking down and everything else. We watch it, and then all of a sudden he starts like making the planets float, the little things float around. And they're like, and then when he gets him to come to the house and gets him up the stairs by Lane, if I'm giving away any spoilers, it's been forever, okay? It's like you're like, I don't even know what to say. You had your chance, okay? There's a limit on this. Like he's putting out the Reese's Pieces to get E.T. to come along, and he's grabbing them and grabbing them. And then they're watching, they're like, he likes candy. Aliens like candy. So I can immediately see their head just kind of going through like, we need to get some candy and find some aliens. And so we're like watching this, and we go through, and then it gets to Halloween where they're trying to help him out, and they dress him up as this ghost, and he's like, hello, Elliot, mom, and he's doing his thing, and they're like, what's going on? And my daughters think it's the funniest thing, and then in the thing, there's the scene where he's walking, and then there's another kid dressed up as Yoda. He's like, go home, go home, go home. He starts trying to follow him, and they're like, that's Yoda, that's from Star Wars. I'm like, oh, you are my kids. And so we're watching all this happen. We're having so much fun, until we get to the place where Elliot and E.T. start getting really sick. And I had forgotten how heavy that scene was. Elliot's laying on the bathroom floor, E.T.'s on the floor, and they go to get Mom. And Mom walks in, and Elliot is pasty, and he just doesn't know what to do. And E.T. is like, at this point, is so it looks like his skin is he's sick. And then the people come in the suits, and they like totally vacuum up the house and get everything sealed. And they make this main room where they're working on E.T. and Elliot, and they're watching because they're in sync. As Elliot gets sick, as E.T. gets sick, they're in together. Everything is moving and reacting together. And I'm watching this, and I'm so just enveloped in the story, I forget that in the recliner with me are two little girls, until I'm starting to get, because I'm like, you relive these moments over again. And I watch my daughter, Roxy, next to me, my daughter, Chloe, and Roxy is just sobbing. And it's like not just regular sobbing, it's like ugly cry. Like, he just broke up with you crying. Like, yeah. They didn't renew your season of whatever show you love crying. Like, she's bawling. And I'm like, oh. And I just put my arm around her because I don't. And we do it. And then Chloe, she's a sympathy crier. So she starts crying. And we're all just crying. And you can watch as it pans away in Elliot's face. And E.T. flatlines. I was not expecting that. Now, I knew that happened in the movie, but I wasn't expecting the reaction from my daughters. You see, there are moments that are not from a movie, that are instances that we walk out in this life, that leave us, that take us by surprise, that leave us in such deep pain, that rock our circus, that we have no clue how to respond. That we don't know what to do. We didn't see it coming. We didn't know what was happening. We've watched it play out in the lives of people that we know, and we go, this isn't a movie. We can't turn this off. We can't just put it away, that this is real and this is happening, and I just don't know what to do. And sometimes it leaves us in a place where so much pain overwhelms us that we deny that it's happening. And we just go, you know what? Even though I know it's my circus, I don't want to deal with it. It's not my monkeys. I'm just going to compartmentalize and push it to the side. See, this is why I love walking through series like this. Because at the end of the day, we can know as much about the Bible as we want to. But if we can't process and apply what it means to live this journey out, you and I, following in the footsteps of Jesus, we are going to falter and get this life wrong. And when we watch the very example of Jesus, every single week that we've been going through this series, Jesus interacts with people in the midst of their circus in a way that shows us not only is that how he loves me, but how am I to respond when I watch this going on in someone else's life? And if you have a Bible, I'd love for you to turn over to the book of Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7, as we walk this out. Because Jesus encounters these amazing people, and he jumps into the middle of this lady's circus in a way that absolutely blows my mind. If you don't have a Bible, we give them away for free in the lobby at the Get Connected table. You could download a Bible app, and you could download the Forefront Church app that has the verses that we'll have, notes, and all these things. We want to make sure that you're able to engage what's happening here, that it's not just something that you, for an hour and 5-10 minutes that you go, man, I got my fill of Jesus, and I move on. That is something that's happening day in and day out in your life. And I love when we pick up in Luke chapter 7, starting in verse 11. If you don't have a Bible, it'll be here on the screen. It says, soon afterward, Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went along with him. Now, I want to pause there because you might hear the word disciples. That's actually the goal that we have for every man, woman, and child that encounters Forefront. That these guys that were following Jesus, the disciples meant that they were followers of him in the way that they moved, in the way that they talked, in the way that they carried themselves. Now, they did not get it perfect, because you might be like, oh, well, they followed Jesus all the time. They must have been. No. They made bonehead decisions. They said dumb things. They sometimes would watch miracles take place and go, what just happened? I don't even know. I don't like they were a little clueless at times. And so if you say, man, I don't know if I could be a follower of Jesus. I don't know if I could eventually see my life turning into somebody that knows him and follows him and does this stuff because I don't know if I can carry the weight of perfection. You don't have to. These guys didn't, by a long shot sometimes. And yet Jesus walked and taught and did life with them. And so as they continued on, a large crowd went with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a large crowd from the town was with her. And so this was, they didn't have hearses and these type things. And so as they're walking this journey out, they would carry the people out where they would eventually bury them on the outskirts of town because they didn't have the, caskets and cemeteries and things like we have, where we're able to make sure that that doesn't, as a body decomposes, it doesn't get into the water, and all these other things that make people sick. And so they would take them out as far as they could away from town to be able to bury them. Verse 13 is what has wrecked me over the last 2 weeks. When the Lord saw her, and this is just another name that Jesus was known by, the Lord. When the Lord saw her, when Jesus saw her, his heart went out to her. And he said, don't cry. His heart went out to her. I don't know about you, but I wonder how you react when you watch pain happen in someone's life. Do you just go, man, that's really sad. Like, I hope that works out for you. When we watch pain that happens in this world, do we, and I'm not saying that social media coming alongside people is a bad thing, but if our posting of an image with a hashtag doesn't bring us to a place where our heart is really going out to someone. What do we do when a circus is unfolding, where things have gone awry, they have gone bananas, and we are seeing people dealing with pain, dealing with sorrow? How does Jesus respond when you're dealing with pain? When everything has been turned upside down in your life, you don't know what to do. You've said to yourself, I've tried the God thing, and because it didn't happen fast enough, I'm just going to leave and go back to my previous existence because at least that's what I knew. Because God needs to hurry this up. I'm on a time schedule. How do we react when we're moving in those moments? Well, I love the way Dallas Willard puts it, but it's a little bit of a smack in the face. Shares it this way. He said, the idea of having faith in Jesus has come to be totally isolated from being his apprentice and learning how to do what he said. That we can, you and I it basically, let's unpack this in layman's terms, that you and I can come and be a part of this, that we can learn, that we could even go to a small group, that we could even go this week and serve homeless students in our city, that we could be a part of all these things, but that if our faith isn't rooted, if our faith doesn't have a foundation in what Jesus did, we fail to be, I believe in him. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with somebody that says, well, do you believe in like God? Or, yeah, I believe in God. Like, do you believe that that Jesus guy, I think, I kind of believe in him. There's a very different thing of just simply believing and having faith that those things existed and actually walking that out in your life and in my life and living the very nature of what Jesus did. It's very easy to say, I love Jesus. It's much harder to say, forgive my enemy. But that's what Jesus did. It's very easy to say, well, man, sure, I love God, than it is to say, well, I'm going to live humbly and not live for myself, as Jesus did. With for lack of a better term, the sexiness of saying, well, sure, I want to follow God because that, there's something about being able to go to heaven and do these things. I want my ticket. And then actually living that out in the dirt and in the gutter and in the grime with other people, which is exactly where God finds each and every one of us. That played out in your life and in mine is very difficult in practice. In moving in those moments where we would actually live that and move and breathe that. But Jesus did it. Over in verse 14, as the story continues on, then he went up and touched the bear where they were carrying him on. This would be a big cart because they didn't have hearses, and so they would have a flat cart with very, just crude looking wheels that they could fashion to be able to move a body out and not touch it and be a part of that. They were carrying him on, and so the bearers stood still, and Jesus said, young man, I say to you, get up. And I love when they have these moments and there's an exclamation point, and I just like this because people just, again, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, think of Jesus as meek, mild, and white Jesus with the blonde hair and blue eyes, which he would have been Middle Eastern, not white with, and so if you have that tattoo, I'm sorry. And so as they walk through this, it just wasn't the case. And so, but we think of him in this manner, and he just says, young man, I say to you, and we could put in there, Jesus exclaimed, Jesus yelled, Jesus testified, Jesus spoke it into being, young man who was laying dead. This isn't one of those things where man, I guess there are just a big crowd of people hallucinating. Mom had no idea. If you're a parent or if you're a friend of someone and you're close to them and you see them laying there, you know whether their body is with life or without it. Because people would say that this account that took place, well, surely he wasn't dead. There might have been a moment where there is a woman who is his mother, who if you were a parent of a child, you know. Be like, I know if there's life there or not. And she is in mourning, and the entire crowd knows that this young man is dead. Young man, I say to you, I scream at you, I say it loud enough for everyone to hear, because we don't have megaphones and microphones and things. Get up. No sooner, verse 15, the dead man sat up and began to talk. Oh, snap. He sat up and talked. Imagine that happening. You're at a funeral. Everybody, the lady has gotten up to sing, and then we're about to part ways, and everybody's doing it, and all of a sudden, Uncle John sits up. What are y'all doing? You would flip out. Like, I don't even know what just happened right now. You would lose your mind. And there's a crowd of people moving along, and Jesus stops, and the pallbearers stop, and he has touched, which is a no-no. You don't touch the dead. They are unclean. Teacher, you're going to have to sanctify yourself. You're going to have to cleanse yourself. He's like, oh, no. We're about to watch God do what he does best, and that only he does. He touches the body, and the man sits up and begins to talk. We ask ourselves, why would Jesus get into this? Why would Jesus want to join our circus, in my pain, in my suffering, in my hurt, there's other people that are suffering way out there. We may have a false sense of humility and say, well, there's other people that need it. He doesn't need, I'm just going to move on. Or we might have a false sense of identity, where we say, oh, I'm not good enough. There's no way that this can happen. I've tried and tried and tried to walk this out, and I'm just at the end of my rope. I've tried this Jesus thing. I've tried this God thing, and it just doesn't work. Or I've walked along. This is just, we've accepted, I'm going to walk this out with God, but this is the way it always is going to be. God said no. It's not on my timetable. And we walk through the litany of excuses. Now, I would say it this way, is that Jesus joins your circus not because he owes you something. He joins that circus not because he needs you. People say, oh, well, Jesus needs you. Do you part of that? God does not need you or I to fulfill what he wants to do in this world. Now, that seems like very the antithesis of like, hey, I need you guys to serve and be a part and work with kids and work with students and do this. The truth is, if you don't step up, somebody will. But God wants you. He hopes for you and I to be a part of these things. But Jesus doesn't do this because he doesn't need us. He's not trying to prove something. He jumps into our circus because he loves you. Because he loves me. And you may not feel that way because it's not happening fast enough. That's the number one thing I hear from people who engage faith. They're having a bad time. Their circus has gone awry. They come to God because they need some Jesus, and they walk through this, and I get it. I get all of those things, and I'm glad when each and every person, that was my story. Walking away from the church and God, then coming back because life had fallen apart. And many of your stories walk out the same way in some facet and way, shape, and form. But what happens is, and why people come in for a couple months and go out, well, this is going bad, this is going, and then God doesn't show up fast enough. And I always ask people, how long did it take for that pain, that suffering, that hurt, that situation to happen? Well, it was a long time. It was a long process. And I'm like, so you're expecting, I said, I just want to make sure. So you did this for 8 years, 5 years, 10 years. And you come to God and you're like, God, hurry up. Come on. Hey, I need a little quicker. Here, let's move this along. Is the hamster falling asleep at the wheel? Or are you up there just taking a big celestial nap? Like, come on, let's move this thing along. Let's get this train moving. Burger King can at least get this done in a little bit faster time. And I get it my way. And so, can we at least move this further? And he's like, is that really the way we want this to play out? Because God knows exactly what you need, when you need it, in the timing that you need it. See, I hung around my wife years before her and I ever got married. Now, if her and I actually started dating at the time that we met, it would have been a disaster. I was an awful human being. She was holy and honorable and loving and followed Jesus, and I was none of those things. And God knew that if we were to get together, nothing, because my life was an awful circus. And then years later, we get together, and I'm like, my life is a little better and a little bit more put together. And then I was able to con her enough to get together and keep her and all this stuff. And so I'm so thankful. God's amazing. But we walked through this. It was like, man, my life, if I had sat in this and walked through this and been in this hurt, and you've been there too, and there have been moments in your life where you've questioned that higher power, that being, and you've had moments where you've wondered, is God going to move in my pain, in my suffering, in my hurt, in my doubt? And the answer to that is yes, because he loves you, but it does not happen on your timetable or mine. And if we want something our way, we can go to Burger King. But if we want something God's way, we have to learn and embrace patience. And that is so hard to do when we're in the middle of a circus, isn't it? Because we're like, I just really want to get through this because this really hurts. But the truth is, when Jesus jumps in, things change. Verse 16 in the same part of that story. They were all filled with awe and praise God. That word awe, if you have a highlighter or if you can, you can do the little thing where you could poke the verse and then highlight that and bookmark that and praise God. A great prophet has appeared among us, they said. God has come to help his people. The news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country. And I love that word that they were all filled with awe. Because you want to know why? Because dead people don't get alive. Like, that wasn't something that they would go to. Man, did you go to John's funeral the other day? Totally popped up. It was awesome. Yeah, I went to Frank's funeral. He did the same thing. Yeah, Susie's funeral. She popped up. That was pretty cool. Like, I like those tricks. Like, that wasn't a normal occurrence. People weren't going for a show. Be like waiting around like, I wonder if she's going to pop out today. Is she going to make it to the gate today before she pops up and starts talking? That was not happening. And so there's this amazing moment where they're watching something that they know doesn't happen unless God is a part of it. And they are filled with awe. I've watched these awe moments in my life and in this church time and time again. Even getting into this space that we call home for the last 2 years, after being a church 18 years. You know, a long part of that time was being portable. And we're like, I don't know. And God orchestrated amazing things for us to get in here. Watched a couple that came to our church, and I've shared this story before, that was involved in drugs and hurt and pain, and then ended up at our apartment where my wife and I were living years ago. And they acted real freaked out by the end of it, and they said, hey, we've been in your apartment before. I'm like, oh, that's a little weird. This is the first time you've been in here. Like, no, we've been in your apartment before, and I wanted to grab something sharp and protect myself. And they're like, no, you see, before you ever lived here, there was another guy that introduced us to drugs. And then we went down a year path that was awful. And then we began to turn a corner, and we started coming to your church. And now we're here in the same place where we started this journey, and we're learning about God in your living room. And I'm like, Spielberg can't write that. Watching these moments take place. There's a friend of my wife and I, her name's Jennifer, and her husband Jason. They've been walking through this journey where their daughter had a heart defect, and they've walked through the first 6-8 months of her life really difficult. And they were like, they had almost gotten to a place where they wanted to trust God for a miracle, but God, if you don't give a miracle, we will come to acceptance that this is the way it's going to be, and that our daughter might not live through her first year. And as they walked that out, miracle after miracle began to take place. And not only did things start popping up and they started going to the right doctors, but people were beginning to step in and help pay for things and take care of them, and they were getting to the right places. And then she got on a wait list. But the wait list was really long to be able to get a new heart, and so they're like, she might not have the time. And things began to happen, and we don't wish that bad things would happen to little children, but one bad situation happened. And what I love about the way that God writes this narrative of life is he takes situations that he didn't want happen, that he didn't orchestrate to happen, but he still turns them around for good. And you see, as one family was hurting, and they didn't know why, and Jennifer and Jason began praying for that family, what they got news was that their young daughter was about to get a heart. One that they thought they would never be able to hold her for very long. And sure enough, she's doing beautifully. These awe moments. And you and I may ask, like, will God show up? Does God show up? How will God show up in this circus and in this mess? But the early writers of the Bible, engaging with God, knew this truth. In the book of Lamentations, which is a book of laments, a book of sorrow, the writer writes this: the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Great is your faithfulness. Even when this feels hard, even when I just don't understand, even when things get rough, you are in control. And so what do we do when we see the pain in our own lives and the lives of others? We need to be able to move and love and put that love into action. That when you truly experience that the love of Jesus, you cannot keep it in. You have to jump into somebody else's circus. You just say, I don't have an excuse. It's like compel you. It's like when you hear that beat and all of a sudden your body starts moving, and I can't dance at all. And it's like all of a sudden you're like, I don't know what's happening to my body right now, but I just got to move. It's like when you see somebody else's stuff going on, you're like, I don't even know what's happening, but I'm walking over to it. This is super weird. Can you stop me? And you just keep moving into people's lives. And you're like, I don't know, but the love that God has for me moves me, compels me to have compassion, that my heart is going out to them. And when our heart goes out to people and it moves us to action, it changes their story. And we want to tell everybody. When we see death move to life, we can't help but tell other people. You know, my daughters, when we were sitting in that recliner And I was like, uh-oh, this is going to go bad. I'm going to have to tell their mom that I've wrecked them for life. And they're just sobbing, and we're sobbing. But I knew. See, I knew something they didn't. That things were about to turn a corner. They turned a corner just like this.
E.T. phone home. Phone home.
Does this mean they're coming?
Yes. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. Phone home.
Quiet.
Phone. E.T. phone home. Phone home. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home.
And as this scene is unfolding, and I'm also then trying to explain to my daughters, don't say shut up, okay? And dude, there's like movies where you watch and you're like, I didn't know that was in there. And this is happening, and Roxy is like jumping up. Like she's in like an animated, she jumps up. She's like, E.T.'s alive. E.T.'s alive. E.T.'s alive. She's like, and she just runs off. She just runs off. I'm like, where is she going? She runs upstairs to tell her mom. E.T.'s alive. E.T.'s alive. E.T.'s alive. He was dead, but now he's alive. He's dead, but now he's like you. And now he wants to phone home. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. E.T. phone home. And she's like, and like she's freaking out. Because she watched what she thought could never happen. And you may believe that there is no way that your pain, that your hurt, that the death, the decay that is happening inside of your being could ever be moved. Or that in the life of a friend and a loved one, that there's no way that that could ever change. But I'm here to tell you that the power in the name, in the movement of Jesus, when it enters into someone's circus of life, makes people move from death to life. And when that happens, you can't help but go tell everybody and then begin to jump into their circus to watch the same thing happen with them. Why don't you pray with me?